From the Marquee Media Studio inside Mark Tank, it's the Mark Haney Show.
Yes, this is the Mark Haney Show, and we are on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown we love. And we do that by building the backyard advantage, the most connected community in the world for local entrepreneurs. And it's centered around this culture of love, right? Helping one another. And today on the show, we have one of those entrepreneurs that is really, I think, showing some love to a lot of the business community here in the Sacramento region, and she's focused in the philanthropic nonprofit area. Her name is Becca Whitman, and so she's joining us, and the name of her company is it called Navigate? No, what's the name of your company? Jeez.
Guide and Give.
Guide and Give. Gosh, how embarrassing. So I'm a little, just for anybody who might be watching this on YouTube, and but podcast as well, I'm a little discombobulated because we are not in my normal podcast studio. We had a little flood a couple nights ago, and so the carpet's pulled out of the office, and one of the sprinklers went off for the fire, and anyway, flooded the building. So we are in the conference room, and Becca has been kind enough to sort of put her life on hold for a few minutes here while we get our recording together. So welcome to the show, Becca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, I love what you do. I think what you do is so important, but when I think about the conversation we were just having, and your real claim to fame is that you win kickball championships, beating like younger people
That's right.
on the kickball field.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's got to feel pretty good.
Top of the resume.
No, welcome to the show. So tell us about your company and how you got started, and then I'll pepper you with some more questions.
Okay. So Guide and Give is a consulting firm for strategic and thoughtful and meaningful community investments, right? Whether you're a company, a person, that kind of thing. It's funny because looking back on my career, there's a very strong theme of partnership and collaboration and connection. And I just really like people, and I like to help people. So when it was time for me to try something new, I went against every bone in my body and took the leap into entrepreneurship, which is still, I'm getting sweaty palms.
You mentioned you were a little nervous because you're risk averse, and it's like,
yeah,
wow, you're an entrepreneur now.
yeah, it is officially, I can't, no going back. There's so many, obviously, benefits. And I just thought, okay, if I'm going to do this on my own, if I'm going to have all the new stressors that come with entrepreneurial life, what do I want to do? And I just always go back to, I really enjoy learning about people, meeting people, and helping people connect. So basically, Guide and Give is wherever you are in your community giving, whether you have done nothing or you have a full-blown platform and a team, and there's probably a place that you need some additional hands or help or guidance. So that's where I'm hoping to kind of plug in.
Choosing, you called it an investment earlier, Guide and Give, and so make sure our audience understands this is philanthropic type of investing. Is that right?
True, yes, but could also be, some people don't have money to give; they have their time.
Okay.
Right, their talent, treasure, that kind of thing. So it could be any of those. If you're a small company and you're just starting out, and you can't write a $5,000 check, you can't write a $100 check, could you donate your time?
Yeah.
And how do you do that thoughtfully? How do you do that in a way that helps your brand without, sacrificing authenticity? I think that whole genuine piece is a big deal.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to dive into the business a little bit, but in terms of entrepreneurs, there's entrepreneurs out here or wantrepreneurs out listening or watching that are probably thinking, wait a minute, back up a second. She was working in the corporate field or in the private sector with a good job, and then somehow got the courage to go out on our own as a consultant in this particular case. But that's a pretty scary leap, I think, for any of us. If you've got the comfort of a paycheck. You mentioned earlier that your husband was part of what gave you confidence.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I'm quite blessed. Yes. In fact, I'll tell you how. One morning last January, a year ago, I'm thinking about this, right? I've been thinking about it for a while. I need a lot of time to think. The thing that was keeping me from saying yes for probably 2 years was health insurance.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I have 2 kids. He's self-employed, so he doesn't have benefits, right? So that was the thing for me. And I come out of the house one Saturday morning, or bedroom one Saturday morning, and he says, "Hey, I have something to show you." I said, "Okay." He goes, "You got to come to the backyard." I said, "All right." So I follow him out. He goes, "I poured the pad for your office."
Oh.
Right.
Wow.
And my first reaction wasn't nice because I was very angry, right? Because another concern was money.
Yeah.
Right? Why would I leave the stable weekly paycheck, the 401k plan, to go into question mark, right? So I was like, we can't be spending money.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do this, you can't build me an office. And he said, "It'll be fine. You're good at what you do."
Well, luckily he's in construction, so hopefully
I don't have to pay for labor.
But how did you overcome the health insurance thing? Did you just private, just fork out of your own pocket, or went without maybe for a while? Not really by choice on that going without part, but you know how education, right, decreases ambiguity and anxiety. And yes.
So I have some very good people in my village who said, before you start jumping to conclusions about how expensive it will be, do your research, make yourself feel better, right? So I did that, and I still didn't feel great, but I just knew I have to do this because I'm never going to feel comfortable, right? It was like deciding to have kids. It's not the right time. It's not the right time. It's not the right. Okay, well, when?
You look back, the next thing you know, you're 80 years old with all these regrets. It's like, I should have started that company back when I was passionate about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have the, I guess the energy for it, right? And I do have another dear friend in the entrepreneurial space he was one of the first people I talked to when I decided I think I might do this. Still, until the day I was officially my own boss, I was still saying might, Yeah. And then there was no IT department. And it's like, okay, this is a real thing now. Yeah.
I have to do my own computer.
Why is Outlook doing this? So he told me that when he decided to leave his corporate safety net, his children were the same ages as mine. And his wife at the time had a part-time gig. And so I just thought, and he's doing wonderful work and he's a good human. And I just thought, you know what? It's going to be okay. There were enough people that came out of the woodwork and said to me, "You're going to be fine. Just let it go."
Well, I can imagine. So I feel like I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Back, I had a newspaper out when I was a little kid, even. When I hear these stories, I can relate to them, because I hear enough of them. But I would never start a business alone. So that's my thing. I would be frightened to death to try to start something on my own because of IT, because of like all the things I suck at. I wouldn't want to start. I wouldn't want to go it alone. So I think that's it's more courage when you do it that way. I'm always like rallying some people around. Hey, you want to do this? Yeah. And hopefully they're good at everything so I can, be me.
Yeah. I there's been a lot of phone calls to people who have more recently, right, friends who have gone off to do their own consulting or marketing and that kind of thing, to say, okay, what did you do with this and how did you do that? And I just keep going back to, I have always tried to be truthful and genuine and kind, and I think that comes across when I meet people, and so now I need them, right? And
yeah.
and everyone keeps telling me, which sometimes I'm like, really, I don't buy this, is that they want to help me. I'm like, I really?
Be nice and people will help you.
Right. And know, I guess, too, what to ask for.
Yeah.
I
feel like that's one of the things we're building in Sacramento is this backyard advantage. And the idea is, what are you working on? How can I help? And so if we can build a culture around helping one another where we are proactive about asking you what you need, and maybe there's somebody either we can help or maybe there's somebody we know that can help. And I think Sacramento is well positioned because we do have a little bit of that, let's call it Midwest personality, but even though we're out here in California, people want it. We got good people here in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Yes, we are not threatened. There's not this competitive weird thing. And I love that almost all of my, little coffee dates and lunch meetings almost always end with, okay, so what can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's cool.
Isn't that cool?
It is cool. Well, you worked for Raley's for a while, and I know, we talked about, Mike Teal and Chelsea Minor, but the Raley's culture, one of the reasons it's been around so long, I think, is because of the way you feel when you go into a store, and they've got more of a, even though it's a large corporation as compared to many, you still get a kind of I go to the one in Loomis here, and it's like this hometown touch.
Yeah.
And I love that they were able to keep that together. So, and I think that's, it's almost like the perfect brand for Sacramento.
Yeah. Well, and there's that humble piece, right? We talked about that, part of your job is just liking people and wanting to help people because that's what we do.
Yeah. And I think that starts at the top. You're right. We talked about Mike Teal and how humble he is, and I didn't know his mom and dad, grandparents and stuff, but I assume it's just like a family thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's incredible that it has remained right through generations.
Yeah. I met his son, I guess it's Robert Teal. Robert.
Yeah.
He's got the same stuff too. So I was like, wow, okay, it came from Mike to Robert. So it's impressive. But this is not about them. This is about you and the people that you deal with. Because as I think about your business model, right, you have there's two sides to this set of relationships. You have the people that want to donate their time, talent, or treasure. And then you have the people that are clamoring to get that time, talent, and treasure. There are so many nonprofits out there these days. Sometimes I think, we have another nonprofit starting? Are you kidding me? There's too many. There's somebody doing the same thing. What's the difference in your one-person show with a board and you're asking for donations? So why don't we start? Which side do you want to start with? You want to start? Let's talk. I want to talk about both sides of that transaction: the donor and the recipient. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with recipients.
Okay.
I love that word.
What does tell me about these recipients. Who are they for you and to you?
Well, I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of very good nonprofits over the years. And it's funny that you mention it feels like there's a lot. I think being in the state capital, we have a higher density.
Interesting.
You factor in associations, and we are one of the few metropolitan areas that has 4 healthcare systems, right? Like there's a lot going on here just because it's Sacramento. But then, yes, should you be a program under a nonprofit instead of your own, and you're diluting resources, and that gets hard.
Yes, and things are less. What I've seen is things are less sustainable. So you have this person who starts this nonprofit, and it's always a battle, just like any small business is a battle, and they don't really get over the hump in terms of creating a sustainable model, a revenue model, where it's like, okay, now it's working. I can hire employees to sort of run it for me, and it can take on a life of its own. Instead, it's so reliant on them, like the solopreneur. If I leave, the thing goes out of business. And so the thing ultimately dies or goes out of business when that person gets tired.
Yes. Or in addition to that, since COVID, right, all the specific funding that was going in, and that you needed growth to provide certain programs, well, now those are phasing out.
Okay.
So now what happens, right? There's all that kind of...
The companies that you help on the recipient side, let's call it, they're all nonprofit, right? So the nonprofits, are any of them like I described, where they don't really have a revenue model? They don't have a service that they provide that ends up somebody pays for it. It's basically totally reliant on, let's do an event, hopefully we raise some money, walk around and ask people to donate.
Yeah, no.
You don't deal with those type of companies?
No, not the majority of. So one of the things that I was very fortunate to learn under my Rayleigh's tenure was the importance of fiscal responsibility, right? That sustainability piece, how the board, working board, advisory board, and so most of the nonprofits that, we were talking about Nation's Finest earlier, a lot of the nonprofits that I've worked with in the past, that I work with currently, they're sound and true, and they've been around a while, and they have good leadership, both on the staff level and the board level, right? Really important. And there's a lot of due diligence that goes into that when you're on the other side, right?
Okay.
The company side as the funder. You need to know, hey, my money, I don't have a lot of money to give away, and I need to know that it's going to make a difference and that it's going to help the people you say it's going to help and not pay your salary necessarily. And
what, in terms of the recipients, what are the different, are there certain, I guess, classes of, I don't even know if classes is the right way to phrase this. There's certain sectors, right? We talked about, there's homeless, there's medical stuff, there's people that really, want to help cancer, or maybe it's, some other disease. We have a veteran nonprofit that we started years ago. We help veterans and people that are in the military. We help entrepreneurs with the Growth Factory nonprofit arm. So I don't think the entrepreneurs are on the front of people's mind in terms of nonprofit, but that's what we do. We work with cities and corporations to help them drive innovation and entrepreneurship throughout their constituency. And on the veterans, we help build a great workforce and provide a transition service. But people aren't really looking at entrepreneurs. Like, I feel like we're an underrepresented type of nonprofit in that the Growth Factory's nonprofit arm, people don't think of us as like, oh, entrepreneurship is a nonprofit? Well, it can be. Yeah. Are there any others out there that are sort of like nuanced like us? But maybe give us like a broad spectrum of what's like popular.
Yeah.
Who's getting all the money?
That's a great question. I think it depends on what your company purpose is.
Oh, okay.
So as you were saying all that, I was thinking, if I had to bucket these nonprofits, I would go more by mission.
Okay.
And like impact area, focus area, right? So your veterans, your connecting piece here is that workforce development, right? That's your heart and soul. Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of sense. So that would be the bucket I'd put you in.
Okay. Where would you put the entrepreneurship bucket? That one's a little bit out there. There's people that understand the power of entrepreneurship and what it can do. I mean, we have high school students that are like building companies that are getting funded, and they're getting launched out of our nonprofit organization. Really good stuff.
Yeah. Great
for the society.
Yeah.
But people don't think of it as like that's nonprofit work.
Yeah.
Well, we have really successful people helping us.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like we have the amateurs doing it.
Right. Economic or civic development.
Yeah, it's economic development. Yeah.
Yeah. Which in one of my baseball jobs, I worked for a gentleman who dabbled in economic development. So just through osmosis at an early age, I was kind of like, oh, I see how this, and how is this nonprofit work? But then it does make a lot of sense, right? When you start to think about all the benefit back to the community. Mm-hmm. So I would say that economic development, and I do agree with you, that is a small category.
Yeah, we have you're kind of a niche there, dude. Well, story of my life.
But it's great. And the way you put it with, they just need a boost. Mm-hmm. There's such a spectrum, right, of that your heart going into it. And
well, I like to invest into people who are extremely ambitious, whether it be my time, talent, or treasure. I want to help people that want to help themselves. So that's where I come in. Other people want to help the downtrodden and hopefully get them from victimhood to productive or fed, right? So, right, some people just need to eat.
Yeah.
There's basic needs. that's just not where my general, I mean, I care about that, but it's not where you can only choose so many things.
Yeah.
But that's got, when I go into the grocery store, they're, Rayleigh's is a good example. They're trying to help the people who need food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's your
Part
business
of that mission.
purpose and your mission and, the helping people make good choices, right? So nutrition education is that kind of thing. And then that dabbles into child welfare support. And
do you have any sense as to what the largest markets are, though, in terms of that? So the sectors, like who's getting all the money?
Yeah, who's getting all the money? Oh, that's a
if you were going to start a nonprofit, like where would you go? Right? I have to start a nonprofit. Who gives money to what? Money?
I really think there's some hot topics recently, right, in the last couple of years. But for more of a historical, that sustainability piece, right? It's gonna last forever and help people.
What's trending? You said there's some hot ones over the last couple of years. Is that what would that be?
I would say like like helping underrepresented communities, right?
Okay.
And whether that's in workforce development, that does dabble into the entrepreneurialism, right?
It does.
Like how can we give you the career skills or the skill sets you need for a career maybe you're not meant for your school, all these things. For
example, on that though, sorry to interrupt you, like Sierra College, we work with Sierra College, and they're not growing up. Their parents typically are working people, or maybe they're even lower income type people going to Sierra, doing their 2 years, and then go on to maybe Sac State or something. But these are people that haven't been exposed to entrepreneurship and success and things like that as much maybe as people who are going to Davis.
Right, exactly. Don't even realize it is a career path, right? And what options and opportunities lie there.
Right, but they're brilliant. They're brilliant people over at Sierra College or at the high schools. It's like intelligence gets spread more evenly than what we might think, but opportunity doesn't necessarily do that.
Yeah. It's just that education, right? Hey, have you ever thought about this or that? I mean, I've got a kid who he wants to be a mechanic, So and I've been looking what programs are out there for an 8th grader.
Oh boy,
there's a lot of high school stuff. There's a lot of UTI, right? Like that kind of thing. But is there a nonprofit that?
They're in UTI is what comes to mind, but they're a for-profit school. But I don't know about nonprofit. I know Sierra College has a great program for welding and working with your hands and automotive mechanic type stuff.
Those CTE that if we're talking about like hot topic areas, that kind of thing. There's a lot happening in there.
Yes,
that space. Realizing, we're going to need tradespeople.
Big time shortage of people that want to turn a wrench, swing a hammer.
Yeah,
I noticed that. Well, your husband's in construction, so he knows firsthand. I own a construction company as well, and getting people we have a concrete company, so getting people that want to do that kind of work these days when we don't grow up, I don't think this is just Sacramento, but people here aren't growing up saying, I want to grow up and be, in construction as much as they were. Like when I was a kid, construction was a great job. I hope I get a job in construction.
Yeah, I wholeheartely agree.
It's changed.
I feel like it's starting to come back.
Good.
That there's in middle school and high school, you hear like, hey, you could be a doctor, you could be a roofer, you could be, so there's.
Good. And if you learn the trade too, even as technology comes in and robots are doing some of this work, you understand the building process better than most, even though we're going to have a robot doing a lot of the work for you.
Yeah. And then you could maybe fix the robot.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so these nonprofits, what are the biggest things that you say sustainability? When you look at a nonprofit and to see if they're investable, we'll call it, what kinds of things do you look at? You mentioned sustainability, the board, and maybe an advisory board. How do you approach that decision?
Are their funding sources diversified?
Okay.
Is 90% of it coming from the county?
That would be bad.
That would give cause for just to say, okay, so what happens if the county says we're not going to fund that anymore?
Ooh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's when, and then people have the potential of falling into the gap. Right?
What if it's funded by the federal government or the state? Do you consider that the same as the county?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you have one major funding source, then that's got a risk associated with it.
Yeah, because you want to be able to say, yeah, we're getting some government funding here, and then we have some sponsors here, and we have individual donors here, right? Like a nice smattering of support.
Okay.
That way, if any of those trickle off, you're still okay.
What turns you off besides the let's call it the fragility of the business? Okay, the business is strong. Are there any other turnoffs that would be like, well, I don't know if I would go there because the CEO is getting paid too much money, or that type of thing? Are there things that are just not good?
If you notice a lot of mission drift, which I would also argue as the funder, you shouldn't ask a nonprofit to change their mission or adjust their mission just for what you want.
Okay.
Right? Maybe that's just not the right fit. So when a nonprofit is in so many lanes that maybe don't even make sense anymore, you can kind of connect them. That's a bit of a red flag. I've had some very good conversations with some of the nonprofit experts in our area, and the overpaid staff, right? Those kinds of things that we worry about as donors or funders, I think don't alarm me quite as much, right? When you think about the nonprofits that you are associated with and those you run, right? They take a lot of work. They are a business.
And you don't want people that can't do the job doing it. I had a conversation with my buddy Craig, who happens to be on our board the other day, and talking to him about this trend toward that's less of a turnoff because he's involved with multiple nonprofits. And having highly paid, highly qualified people running the business, it's actually, we appreciate that because it means that we're going to be more effective and the business is going to be more likely to thrive.
Right. And that's the whole point of the nonprofit.
So you can't pay people a minimum wage to drive a multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have been taught over the years, like, you need to kind of let that go.
Okay.
When we've had those national scandals where you find out 75 cents of your dollar is going to the CEO, right? Yeah. That wasn't good. But I'm more okay with, is 30 cents of my dollar? Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's anything, if, what's interesting coming from a more corporate funder perspective is if you have your mission and your purpose, right, you should be aligning with nonprofits who share that. So a red flag there could be when it doesn't.
Okay. Can you give me an example of that?
That's a great question.
Let's take Raley's. They care about food sustainability. They might be, but they also care about workforce development. They have a lot. They're so big. They have a lot of, things that they probably worry about.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, right? The argument can be: do you pick one impact area, one focus, and give it every penny you have in the budget? And Raley's, as the example, has 4 pillars or areas. And there's flexibility in those, right? Because some of the best nonprofits can get creative while staying true to their mission, and say, we do this with these kids, and that qualifies.
Well, Raley's was kind enough, so we did an entrepreneurial event, and we had a lunch, and Rayleigh's was kind enough to come in and help with the lunch because it's right up their alley. I mean, I think one of the reasons they were agreeable to doing it is because it's easier for them to do that because they're good at it. So for them to provide some catering was not as heavy of a lift as maybe it might be for, somebody else because they're good at that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So aligning with areas where you can maybe add value outside of just writing the check.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so let's flip the other side to as we talk about corporations. You said, whether you just have time and talent. So we're talking about people like, or companies like Rayleigh's or even Intel or these other larger companies that have a presence here in Sacramento. They've got deeper pockets. Some of us small business guys don't have as deep of pockets. So walk me through the sort of the realm of that, the spectrum, I should say, and how you work with each one of those.
Yeah. So, I picture in my head so many times colleagues would ask, can you buy the Little League banner, for my kids' team, right? Yeah. And we all probably understand how important that is and what a difference it makes. And
it's huge.
$250 for that team actually goes quite a long ways, right? So I would say when it comes to some of the bigger companies, and they're established in how they give back, right? STEM education, women in STEM.
Okay, and some high-tech company like Intel might really care about that. It might be more qualified to assess the program as well.
Exactly. Well, and provide that technical assistance, right? I mean, because that's, if you don't have the money, but you have a marketing department, could you create something that the nonprofit needs, right? That they can't afford to hire someone to do. I have often admired the Cliff Family Foundation has a really great white road investment thing they do where it maps out very visually that holistic support. I mean, this, you need this or you need that. And even at Rayleigh's, we keep using Rayleigh's.
I know Rayleigh's. You're going to get a lot of plug. You're going to get hit up for a lot of donations, Rayleigh's. Everybody wants you now.
Yeah, we should pitch the foundations. Even the food banks that they partner with and support, right? Well, when they would need new shelving in their warehouses or a new forklift, we would connect them with our guys to say, can you get them a deal? Can you get them something for free? Yep. What vendor would you recommend, right? So even just, or what would you avoid? What have we used that didn't work out? So even little things like that. But I would say if I'm the smaller business owner, and I know there's so much to do, but just taking a moment to say, okay, where are my customers coming from? Because this is something we don't like to talk about, and it feels a little slimy, but it just needs to be out there, right? There's a societal expectation that companies give back. That's part of what you're supposed to do, right? And it's a bummer that there's layoffs and there's budget cuts and all those things, but you still got to be doing some good, right? So when you can align it authentically with your brand, that's awesome and great, right? So I would thinking about those smaller businesses, take the time to think about it. Where are your customers coming from? What do they care about? What skills, what do you have that you can offer outside of the check?
Yeah. My daughter's got her own real estate business, and so she's a small business person, and I think her focus is mostly in South Placer, so she will help either nonprofits, a lot of little leagues, her kids are into sports, and the areas where she's going to show up anyway, then she ends up being able to donate the banner on the little league fence or what have you, and it ends up circling back around. Just like if I owned a pizza company, I might want to donate to the local football team because afterwards, doesn't everybody like to go out to pizza, that type of thing. Yeah. So it can kind of come back around if you target it correctly.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I think
is that what you were saying with slimy? Is that not that specifically, but that we have this The fact that we donate and we need it to circle back around in some way in our brand, right? Is that wrong? I don't see why that's wrong.
Yeah.
But, it's almost like advertising.
Yes. Right.
But isn't it a banner advertising? Look at me. I donated to the Little League. It's advertising.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, there isn't if it's, when it's done because you just want to help. And I think sometimes people, though, kind of expect there to be giving above and beyond, like that budget line just keeps going and going and going and going.
Well, it's like advertising. We only have so much money we want to have. People, I think, lump that together a lot, too, is like, hey, I'm going to take my advertising, community spend, philanthropy, donations to politicians, whatever it is. It's like, I'm going to kind of lump that over here. It can't be 50% of your sales.
Yeah.
Well, probably in most cases.
Yeah. The cause-related marketing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, totally a thing. And should you do it? Absolutely. Should you do things that no one knows about? Probably.
Like what? Give me an example of that.
Like if you're a company and you donate time, money, product, whatever it is, and you don't put it on social media, you don't put it in a newsletter. Maybe you share it internally.
Like that anonymous guy that buys you an anonymous cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah, right?
I've never been that guy. But you probably should, right? It's a weakness or whatever. It's like, look, I'd rather walk up and buy the person the coffee than make it anonymous. It's more of a personality trait or a insecurity or something.
Well, and it's such a balance.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you don't want to be so secretive about your giving that no one knows you're actually giving, because then that could hurt you, right, in a business sense.
Some people, though, are just so generous, they don't want their name associated because they don't want to be it's because they don't want to put themselves in the limelight.
Yeah.
Right? I know Dale Carlson's a good example of somebody who's done so much philanthropy in Sacramento and around the country. He's got his foster kids program, but he does a lot of others that nobody even knows about. I happen to know about some of it because I know him pretty well, but there are people that do it and you just don't know about it. And they don't want to, now I'm putting it on a podcast, they don't want people to know about it, right? I said, hey, one time I used to have this contract with a billboard company. He didn't want to go on a billboard. No chance, right? He wants to downplay his stuff, which is, I respect it a lot. It's just interesting to get your head around those kind of people.
Well, yes, and I think that's one of those questions to be asked when you start to sit down and think about, okay, how are we going to do this community giving thing, right? Like, what are we going to do that our customers see, and what are we going to do that our employees see?
In a bigger company, are they actually having a strategy session around that? How to spend this, we're going to take 3% of whatever sales, let's call it, and put it in this bucket towards impact, and then they have like a committee that sits around and figures all that stuff out? I
think it depends. I think you can. We've had at Raley's, we had an advisory committee on a specific grant program. There's strategy. I think it depends on leadership and their vision of philanthropy and how much they want that to be behind their company, right? So, in the jobs I've had, it has always been at an executive level.
Interesting.
It's always been that important to get right. But I also know that there are companies where it's one person, right, kind of deciding this is what's going to happen. And if they're doing it well, fantastic. Yeah. Right? That's great.
100%. What about the programs? So I've seen this around a little bit, but maybe not firsthand. I know of it, where companies that, let's say they have higher paid employees by and large, like an Intel, they give a menu of choices for the employee to donate a part of their paycheck to this cause, and maybe there's some kind of matching program.
Yeah.
Is that how common is that?
I think that is with the big companies. Okay. Yeah. That, if you can imagine, right? You have so many employees, and let's say you even say, okay, we're going to match you up to $100. And let's, that can add up pretty quickly.
You bet.
And then when it needs to be strategic and you're using a decent sized chunk of your budget for that purpose, you could argue that's helping employee morale, right? And retention and those things. But does it make sense for you externally?
Yeah.
That's hard. I do love those programs, though.
Yeah.
I this is only from my small little perspective. I do feel like they're not as prevalent or pushed out as much as they used to be. And I worry now, as things start to get a little harder and everyone's kind of tucking money under mattresses. Okay, what?
How does the economy? I have to imagine the economy has a big swing on the philanthropic mindset. So when there's uncertainty in the economy, like maybe there is today, or inflation, those kind of things, hopefully we're not putting money under our mattresses. There's not even getting any interest on it. But but realistically, people are slightly or substantially more careful with their money today than maybe they were a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I was just reading an article about cautious. We're cautious. And I think, 2020 to 2022 kind of skewed everything, right? Because it was such a high giving in 2020, which just shows majority of people are really wonderful.
During COVID, there's people that don't, that are displaced and so on. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can afford the extra toilet paper, so I'm going to make sure I donate this. And so now I think we're back to pre-2020 with a dabble of like 2009 in there.
Yeah, there was a little bit of helicopter money that came down. We all had a little bit extra money, and then that drove up prices, and now here we are. Oh shoot, it kind of got tightened up again.
Yeah, how much is that? Yeah, we're not going to be going out, guys. So I think it's. I don't have a study that I can quote for you, but of the nonprofits I speak with regularly, donations are down.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, what other trends are you seeing in nonprofit? Are there things that are happening within the nonprofit world that, if you're to, look at the trend and paint the picture out, or look at the crystal ball out 5 or 10 years, any significant trends?
Oh, gosh, Mark, you've got good questions. I need to...
This was Scott told me to ask you that.
5 to 10 years out. Nonprofit trends. Let me think about that one while I tell you that I do see a trend on the other side of it, the corporate side. As teams shrink, right? The costing you money teams for businesses, right, get cut first. And as social impact teams are small in general, there are a lot more software and technologies coming out, right, that are going to help fill in a body, right?
Right.
Basically a robot.
Yep.
So I do see they're getting pretty savvy. And that due diligence piece, they're even building that in, like checking databases. Are you a legally formed 501c, whatever kind of thing? On the nonprofit side, oh my God.
Well, I see them using technology in many cases. So we, just checking in and out of events. They're using different technologies now to sign up for an event, or even from a marketing standpoint, using artificial intelligence to target you and so on.
Yeah. Well, and the donation, we were just talking at my church actually, the ability for people to donate their stock.
Yes.
No longer is it, here's your $10, right? Here's some stock and I just thought, wow, I need to get with the times and
absolutely
think about that. So I mean, isn't that incredible? And how young adults are kind of gravitating towards that way.
I've had stock that I wish I would have donated than taken the tax deduction because it dropped down to almost nothing. And I'm like, oh, now I could have donated it and got the tax deduction. Now it's worth pennies on the dollar. So that's so if you're out there thinking about donating stock, sometimes that's a good idea.
Sometimes it is a good idea.
Okay, so what did I not ask you? What do we want to make sure we cover? Because I feel like this is this nonprofit world is an area that is, I think, underserved in many cases. We get so caught up in the high-flying tech companies and the stock market and all that, but these companies that are really on a sole mission to do good for humanity, I mean, they're so important to our society. What did I not cover on this front?
Well, for California nonprofits, they are a significant contributor, right, as their own industry. I mean, they're generating billions of dollars. They have hundreds of thousands of staff members, right? So they're a contender, just as we look at, the bank industry or those kinds of things. I will also say that community giving, right? You have your company purpose and your mission. And there's probably all sorts of things happening internally that support that, right? Because everyone's kind of pointed towards that light. Community giving is one of the few ways that you can actually share what you're doing externally with your customers.
Okay.
So it's, when
you broadcast that you gave to a certain organization, big girls or big brothers, big sisters or whatever.
Yeah. And maybe internally your whole HR department has some sort of special applicant pipeline for the big brothers of big brothers and sisters, right, or whatever that is. But that's not usually known, right? There's a lot of good that's happening internally too. Workplace culture, little events that staff have amongst themselves, their volunteerism efforts, what they're giving back on their paychecks, right? Companies are getting better at sharing all that, but your community giving team and what you're doing with your nonprofit partners is really a good way to say, hey, customers are people that are paying attention to us.
The one thing I forgot to ask, and I wanted to maybe touch on this, how important are community foundations and these donor advised funds that you can set up through, I don't know, let's call it Placer County Community Foundation, or Sacramento County has one, and there's all those. There's a pretty big, there are big pools of money there that I'm sure that people would like to tap into. Yeah.
I personally have very much enjoyed working with community foundations, have worked with a number of them throughout California and Nevada. I appreciate that they come to the table with boots on the ground. They really understand what's going on. So as a funder or a donor, you don't have to know everything about, let's say you want to help homeless youth. You don't have to figure it all out on your own, because they are doing that. They're meeting with that nonprofit, right? They're doing all the due diligence part. And I've also worked with a lot of community foundations when it comes to natural disasters and crisis stuff. And they are fantastic. They rally very quickly. I was talking with someone recently who you probably know. I'm not sure how much name dropping I should do.
Yeah, so I've already name dropped without probably getting in trouble.
But we were talking about how much money community foundations have, and should more be going out, right?
Going out of the foundation? Oh, it gets stuck in. Okay.
Yeah. The argument is it getting stuck? Because it's
interesting.
And how does that look? The donor advised funds, I think, is fascinating. I personally, having been in a development role, don't care for restricted funds.
Okay.
I like having the ability to say, I know you really care about this program, but this program over here really needs the support, right?
And are you saying the donor advised funds restrict in that way?
I believe they
Because I have a couple, and one is like pretty lenient. I just tell them where I want the check written, and it's like, it goes. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
It has to be a 501c3 or something like that, but it can't, it doesn't, I can kind of send it where I want.
Yeah, because you set it up,
Yeah.
right, to be, so they can be more restrictive versus
Okay.
just giving to the foundation and
Okay.
saying, do what you will with it. But that's my former development officer voice.
Well, I think today's show was super educational. We learned what it feels like to become an entrepreneur, which it's scary, but it's doable, and you're making a big impact. And I think we also learned a little bit more about this, philanthropic culture that is here. It's here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And do people, if people wanted to reach out to you, is that something that you look for, or how do you decide whether you take on a client, or do you want volunteers, that type of thing? How does that work?
I like meeting people. So I welcome any, note, email, LinkedIn.
Okay.
I tend to be more of a yes person, let's just see what happens, figure, go with the flow. And I don't know that I'm back into the fundraising game. That would be the only thing. But I don't need volunteers for Guide and Give. I am a volunteer myself, but
okay.
Yeah.
But you might place a volunteer, somebody who said, hey, I heard about that food bank you were talking about.
Yeah.
How do I get an intro to the person that could, put me to work?
Definitely. Would love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because I've heard of something called Volunteers of America.
Yeah.
I've never been involved in that, but
they're great.
okay.
Yeah. Oh, great crew.
I've heard it advertised.
Yeah.
So.
They, in fact, the chapter that's based in Sacramento also covers kind of the Reno, Northern Nevada market also.
Okay.
And there's some really cool stuff happening over there that I think is kind of like, hey, could we do this in California? They're a great organization.
Well, Becca Whitman, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for choosing to be an entrepreneur, and welcome to the club.
Yeah, thank you.
And appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.